This is Interpreting Wine host and founder Lawrence Francis, welcoming you to this, my Willamette Valley winemaker special. Across these 20 episodes recorded in quickfire fashion in January 2020, I got to meet a broad selection of people making wine in the region, both a variety of winemaking scale from the micro to the macro, and also different focuses that include different aging vessels, different grape varieties, sparkling wines, and of course different interpretations of Pinot. Episodes are going to be released in the order that they were recorded, so you'll get to be a virtual guest on the tour. 2 things you can do to help spread this series even further. One is to subscribe to the podcast if you haven't already, either where you're listening or on your favorite podcast platform. And the second, the one that's really going to help push this out there, is to head to interpretingwine.com/iTunes and leave a review letting me know what you think. A genuine, huge thank you in advance. Today's episode of the Willamette Valley Winemaker Special features the folks at Maysara Winery. Exploring the effects and terroir closer to the Van Duzer corridor in the Willamette Valley, we hear their family origin story, go deep into the idea of it being a family business, before getting a virtual estate tour, both above and below ground, and finishing with a tasting of 4 wines, a 2018 Pinot Gris, and a real treat, 3 2014 Pinot Noirs. Enjoy.
Well, hello. My name is Hanna Mumtaz. I am one of the daughters of Maysara Winery and Mumtaz Vineyard. Our family got started in 1997. Our father had purchased this property, which was about 400 acres. Surprisingly, it was April 1st, which is April Fool's. He came home and notified us that he wanted to kind of grow like his great-grandfather had done. And so we ended up with this beautiful farm that was very unruly. And when you first, even nowadays when you come in, it's very unmanicured, where you go to a lot of wineries these days. And they're really trying to kind of showcase a picturesque landscape. I think what kind of separates us is you come out and this is farm country, and we really want to highlight what Mother Nature has given. So we have about 532 acres, which is all biodynamic. Mm-hmm. If you were to look down topically, with our elevations, we have about 560 acres, which is great. So our lowest elevation point when you first come in is about 200 acres, and it goes up to roughly about 800. We started farming in 97. We bought the land in 97, and 98 was our first planting. 2000. We established the winery, and then 2001 was our first vintage. My sister, Tamina, which you guys are going to meet in a little bit, is the winemaker. She has a title of being the youngest female winemaker in the U.S. In just a few short years, she really made a name for herself. A lot of times being a daughter, a lot of people assume that we got handed a lot of things, but she had a lot to prove. And I think that as we taste this lineup, you're really going to see someone that's really seasoned in what they do, which is great. Our winery is Maysara. Maysara means house of wine, translated from Farsi. So our heritage, a lot of people don't realize that wine came from where we were from, and we wanted to incorporate that. So all of our Maysara wines have a Persian word attached, and as we taste through the wines, we'll talk a little bit about the history. Okay. And it's important. It's a big part of us. And people always ask us, how do you pronounce it? And in Farsi, we say Maysara, but we accept any kind of pronunciation. In our own family, interchanges to Maysara, Maysara. So it's been interesting. Our vineyard and winery are fully certified biodynamic, which is really great. So yeah, that's a little bit of our history.
So my name is Hanna Mumtaz. I am the eldest daughter of Mo and Flora, and that's my parents. I came in the winery in 2007. As my middle sister said, that I was the youngest female. That was 24. I'm much older now. I don't feel it anymore. So we make a production of about 8,000 cases, and I do some custom work, and I make about another 10,000 cases for other customers. But our whole goal and our attention is to really make natural wines and let the vintage speak for itself. I don't come in and try to manipulate the wines and say this is what it needs to be. I'm trying to describe the vintage or tell a story about the vintage, because that's really important to me, because what Mother Nature is very different from one year to another year. And then also the farming aspect is very completely different. As you can see today, we had snow and rain, and we change here a lot. So it's the same thing in the summer. So years we have like in 10, 11, very cooler years, and we have cooler wines. And then we have 13, 14, and 15, and 16. I'm not for 13, I'm sorry, 14, 15, 16. There are the trifecta of the really warm, hot years, and the wines are bigger, so completely different. As I joke around, I was like, Jesus does not come in the cellar. We really are making what the fruit gives us. We typically actually pick a little bit earlier than everyone else in our AVA. We're in the McMill AVA. So we're like a little bit southern, by an hour away from the coast, like by southern, an hour away from Portland, the way I drive. Everyone else drives like an hour and 30 minutes. I'm like, wow, you're driving so slow. But we're in the mouth of the Van Duzer corridor, so that wind gust really does help our grapes, because we have a low disease pressure. So we're very lucky and fortunate. And also the way my father farms, the farming it biodynamically and making the wines biodynamically, which when I say making the wines biodynamically, we're not making the wines made with biodynamic grapes. We're solely really just getting the grapes in, letting the native yeast speak. And we do use about 20% new French oak in the cellar total. But my tiers that I have is Jamsheed, Cyrus, and Asha. Jamsheed typically gets about like 10 to 15 depending on the vintage. Cyrus takes about 30%, and then Asha about 35% new French oak on it. My father and I have very huge disagreements of new oak. He likes not a lot of new oak, and I love a lot of new oak. So I've been backing down a little bit for him. Our whole idea is just really showcase the vintage, and not, as my father would be here, and I'm a daughter, so I can say it too. We're not covering up and putting a lot of makeup on it and to sell it to you. We really want to show you the natural beauty and saying this is what Pinot is, and especially what Pinot is to me is a very delicate, fragile grape, and I want to showcase that beauty of that fragile grape and not abusing it and saying you should be this and you need to be robust. I'm saying you need to be elegant and beautiful and soft and ageability. And that's one of my things. The three things I look about is tannins, acid, and alcohol. And I don't make high alcohol wines. Some years it does come that way, but as I said, we pick a little bit earlier, so I try to respect alcohol. And I love acid. My sisters hate this. I'm not an acid head, not in drug wise, but in food wise, I love a lot of acid. So I try to pair my wines with food, and when I'm typically making it, I'm just always thinking, what would this pair with? You know, I love my Pinot Gris. I said, if you can have it for breakfast, then this is breakfast wine is perfect. Being in this AVA, so we can kind of see that we have really thick, robust skins that actually give a little bit extra color and protects the, the tannins. It just makes it robust. So we do a lot of pump overs and no punch downs. I do pulsaires, and if I do it, the guys yell at me because I make a huge mess. So the past 2 years, they've been taking it away from me. So I'm like, you can relax. But yeah, so those are the ways I've been doing our wines. It's just no punch downs. The only wines that we ever punch down is our whole cluster Pinot. And I will say to this day, I still do not punch those down because I'm not that very strong. Or I keep telling them I should get a 6-pack doing it, but my guys do it and they compliment they lost weight. And I'm like, I've gained it for you guys in here. But overall, so as you can see, our Pinot's it's a little bit darker, but it's the natural color. We do not add anything. As I said, we make very natural wines. We do not do any acidification, no chapelization, no Yeah, it's very low. I'm a babysitter. I joke around and I say I have 600 boyfriends in my barrel room, and towards the end I have 9 children. But overall, that is our whole philosophy, is just to really speak what this land does for us.
It's really great to be here. I think, the weather has come in, as you say there. So, we're not going to, unfortunately, get the chance to really sort of, walk around and see all of that. And I'm sure that the wines will speak to all of that you brought in there. Kind of before we really, look into the glass and look at the wines, I do just want to bring up a word that's kind of been coming up in quite a lot, and a theme really that's been coming up in a lot of the interviews I've done, which has been transition. Because I think it's so interesting sitting here now, where you're, as you were saying, Naseem, it's sort of a seasoned team, I guess, and fully engaged in the winery and what you're doing, and we almost know that now as the kind of the end of the story and the current part of the story. I'm just wondering, it's come up once or twice where people I've spoken to, they thought that they were actually not going to be working and being in the wine industry, and a few people have sort of said around, trying to sort of almost get away from the region and go off and do something else. And I just wonder, what was this kind of always going to be your destiny? Was there ever a point where you thought, you might be doing something different, actually, outside of the winery?
This is kind of a funny question. Anyone that has met our father, I mean, he has had so many businesses, and he continues to run multiple successful companies. And it's always taught us girls that we don't really need to do one or two things. I mean, I work at Sotheby's International Realty on the side for weekends sometimes. I run a complete national sales program for the entire winery. We all have many different interests, but this is always going to be our main focus. I think that when you see the blood and sweat our families put into it, we would just be ludicrous not to be in it. I mean, this is our life. This is what we were kind of meant to do. As a kid, for myself, I know that in elementary school, when Pogs were really cool, I would sell those from the cereal box to my friends, or I would have my mom go buy stuff from Costco, and I would sell that to other kids to make money. So sales has always kind of been in my structure, my DNA. And, I can speak for my 2 other sisters that, Tammin has always really been into like the science and the math realm. Hanna, who's kind of going into more of the bookkeeping and accounting, she's always been really good with hospitality and with people. So I don't think that her just kind of moving to bookkeeping means that that's where she's going to be. She's always going to kind of be the life of our little family. I don't know. So it's kind of been in our DNA that we would never leave this. So got you. Do you want to add anything?
Yeah.
I mean, as she said, it's the, you see our parents like really, their blood and their sweat is in this estate. And I mean, I just had a daughter a year ago, and the first thing I said was like, you're a legacy. And I hope she continues the family business, because it's really important that she sees, what our effort is of like, tending to the earth and making really, sustainable wines, and her to notice that, we should care what we're intaking and what we should care or what we're putting out in the earth. So I think that is another thing that we see that our father and mother are trying to do, and we want to carry on that tradition or legacy for her.
Hi, I'm Hanna Mumtaz. I'm the youngest of the family. The past 7 years, I actually was our events manager in hospitality here. But recently, I was able to move on to more of the accounting department of the companies. That's something that...
She just wants to yell at us for spending too much money.
Something that, I've been really great at has been hospitality, but having the opportunity to do something else within the business has just been one of the greatest things. And as my sister said earlier, we all have different interests. And the great thing about what works for our family is that it's not just your job is your job. We all pitch in when someone needs it. So during harvest, if Tamna needs people, we're on the sorting line. We're doing all the dirty work that, pruning and being in the field, lab work. And when Nasim needs help with sales or marketing, things like that, we're all, it's a team effort. So it's something that's really great for our family, that we don't have to just do our job and that's it. We can have the capability of really supporting each other, which has been, I think, a blessing for us. And yeah, every family, we do have fights and things like that. But the great thing is we actually know how to communicate with each other. We know what our strengths are, what our weaknesses are, and we can really be stronger from it. Whereas, it's something that, unfortunately, with other businesses where they are just a bunch of coworkers. They don't have that knowledge of how somebody thinks and how they work. So, works for our family.
It's actually making me think back to a conversation I've had with a few winemakers, but specifically one I had over in Austria with a winemaking couple over there, and they were actually talking to if you think about the wine making process, if you own the whole process, there are so many kind of, inverted commas, jobs that take place there. But if you kind of look beyond that, then there are like so many different skills. And, you've already, spoken about the pruning. As you go further down the line, there's the winemaking and there's all of the the decisions, I guess, and the intuition that you may have to use at certain times there. But yeah, I think quite unlike really just about any other kind of agricultural product, that's kind of almost where it starts when it gets into the bottle. It's then, okay, where is this thing going to be sold? Bring out the hospitality angle. How are we going to speak to this product that's come from our land? How do we treat people when they come to our doors? When these wines are going out there in the world, what's on the label? You've spoken to the name that's on there, the design that's on there. I just think it's such a fascinating, almost kind of ecosystem, I want to say, because there's almost like there is a part of that whole process that you can get interested in, be it the history, be it the science, be it the lab work, and it's almost it sounds as though you're because it's a family concern, you're working for each other. You've got the kind of the freedom and the possibility to kind of go into a number of those different areas and kind of flex your muscles in a number of those different areas. So yeah, really interesting.
So my name is Dominic Allen. I'm the tasting and wine club manager at Maysara Winery. I've worked with the Mumtaz family for the last 9 years. People always ask me when they come into the tasting room, where are the girls? Where are the girls? Well, I'm like the brother the girls never wanted at first, but they kind of got stuck with me after so much time. And one thing about this business that I've always loved, and it's why I've been here so long, is that, any family has fights. My family has fights. Anyone else's I know do. But in the business world, that seems to be such a negative thing. Everyone's worried about, it's a family business. What's going to happen? When the going gets tough, this family gets stronger. They rely on each other, the way that they can bounce back and forth. The girls were speaking on how, they all jump in and help each other out. How many times have Nasim and Tamina helped Hanna out with weddings when something came up, when, we all wear a lot of hats. I started in production with Tamine. Then Nasim groomed me into sales, later on. And I work a lot with Mo, helping with biodynamics and learning a lot about that. It's just, everyone has their place, but everyone is not above themselves to not be able to put down their main role and jump in and be there for that person that needs it. I do our wine club too. And anyone who runs wine clubs, there's stress involved, but every one of these girls jumps in and helps me whenever it's needed. And I've worked in different businesses. I've worked in different companies in different fields. And I've never had that sense of support and camaraderie, feeling like you're not going into your most stressful season of the year alone. And that's something that I think has made this business so special, and I think that's why this business has become so successful, beyond what the beautiful product that's in these bottles. You know, there's a reason people continue to come back. There's a reason that the business grows year after year, and it's because of the blood, sweat, and tears that have been previously talked about that every single person of this family puts into the business.
I'm getting really, I think a strong sense, and I hope the listeners are getting a really strong sense of the culture here, like what it's like to work here. And I think that, I'm really liking this dynamic, and the kind of the stories are coming out, and obviously, sort of following on and sort of adding to the points that each other is making. I do want to just kind of, before we try these wines that are, invitingly lined up on the table here, just to kind of take a moment to talk to where we actually are, the region, those 532 acres that are out there, just kind of in, again, whatever way kind of makes most sense for what happens here, give us that kind of virtual tour, be that above, but I think also, if possible, kind of below the ground. What are we sort of sitting on, quite literally?
When you drive into Maysara Winery's gates, you look up at rolling hills of vineyard. I've been to a lot of different wineries where they position that tasting room on the top of the hill. But here at our winery, you drive back almost a mile into the property on gravel road with vineyard sites all around you. There's this location in the McMinnville AVA, just outside of McMinnville, Oregon. We're known for being so diverse in our soils. As you can see today, we're also very diverse in the weather we're getting. And a big part of that is because of how close our proximity is to the coast and what that marine influences brings into our vineyard. You get increased tannins because of the winds out of the Van Duzer corridor. It's helping prevent a lot of the mold, mildew, and disease issues that a lot of vineyards suffer, depending on what Mother Nature throws at us in a given year. But, before the Yamhill County reclassified our soils, when we pull up a soil map, we had 13 different types of soil across 260 planted acres. We can't do soil type designates. Now they've reclassified it. I believe we have 9 planted. But where different AVAs are very concentrated in certain soil types, the McMinnville AVA is so diverse and varied that allows our wines to have such a unique expression. You're getting Nikia and Jory soils off the top portion of the property. You're getting this beautiful marine sedimentary base with veins of basalt, depending on where you're at. Then add in these hillsides and how steep our slopes are. It's a terroir unlike anything I've had in the valley, and I think it's made such a name for McMinnville over the last few years as being one of the most traveled AVAs in the Willamette Valley. So we were named top 5 vineyards in Oregon in Wine Enthusiast. It's 260 acres on this property that are planted. 245 are Pinot Noir. 15 make up the white grapes, which are 8 are Pinot Gris, 5 are Pinot Blanc, and then we have 2 acres of Riesling. Portions of the property are sold off, to grape buyers and the like, but it helps provide a unique element to all the wines that we produce.
As Dominic just explained about our soil having 13 different soil types in the 260, one of our blocks, we have actually 3 different soil types, and we cannot, I joke about it all the time with people in our cellar, is saying that we cannot separate this soil with this soil, because when the fruit comes in, we take the fruit where that block's from. It's a very hard thing. But we do designate our blocks from block to block, and we after we have one block together, we will co-ferment with another block that has separated it out. But as you said, it's very diverse and very unique. If I can remember, a couple years ago, we had geologists come out here, and they found a 16. They actually went out here and they found a soil they were blown away that we had 14 feet of Jory in here. It's just a very unique site that we have of our vineyard. I just can't speak for the other vineyards neighboring to me, because I only make wines from this estate. So I'm very lucky and fortunate. It makes my job much easier in the sense. But that aspect of it, so it's just really impossible to say this soil will give you this character, but we can say the marine sediment and the volcanic sediment that we have on our property does give these qualities, and we could do that aspect of it.
I think what I found really interesting is that if you talk to a group of winemakers that especially work with our fruit, they can always blindly tell you this is Mumtaz vineyard. There's just a specific style and characteristic that you get out of our estate that you don't get with a lot of other places. I'll never forget, it was probably my 4th or 5th year working in national sales. It was our distributor in Illinois, my sales rep in Chicago, and he was just like, I came out to your vineyard last year and I thought it was the most magical place. And then we went to a restaurant and they had actually brought us over a glass of wine. And the moment I tasted it, I knew it was Maysara. And I think that that really is a testament that when your kind of vineyard stands out on its own, it's a big part of our business is us selling our fruit because it's highly sought after. We actually sell to quite a bit of California producers as well because they want what we have, so it's been kind of exciting to see Mumtaz vineyard designate on a lot of other bottles because it just shows you we have something special going on here, which is nice.
Yeah, now is the time. We've been sort of restrained enough, I think, with these 4 wines looking at us, and I think it would just be really, insightful and just really, really the natural thing is then to talk to how does everything that you've talked to and introduced me to, how does it then show up in the glass, and talk to the wines that are coming out here.
So we're going to be tasting just 4 of the, I believe, 10 wines that we make. In our family, we actually sell more fruit than we produce for ourselves. And what we are kind of known for, and it took a long time for the market to understand what we do, is that we hold back our wines. A lot of times the new world wine producers have to churn out their wines and they keep it for a year in barrel and then they move it out. So we go anywhere from 13 to 30 months in New French Oak, and then we hold back anywhere from 1 year to about 5.5 years in bottle. So none of our Pinot Noirs are released chronologically. And I think that's what people find really interesting. Our Pinot Gris and our Pinot Blanc, we make such a small amount that we go ahead and it's released every year chronologically. Today, we're going to actually get to experience all the 2014s. And this is the first time that we've been able to kind of showcase all the wines in the same year. But typically, the 2012 was what was released of the Jamsheed and the Asha, and we just finally moved into the 14s. And that really goes back to the fact that we want our consumers to know that when they see this on the shelf, it's ready. We actually had a really great article, Wine Spectator. They revisited 32 Oregon brands, their 2008 vintage. And 10 years later, they wanted to go back and taste through it, which I wish more critics did. Our wines, they just take a little bit more time to evolve. But when they do, they're so beautiful. We were the only estate that went from 91 points to 97, 10 years after the release date. So I think that that's so important for people to know. Often when people see those 06s, 07s, 8s, they get scared like, oh, it's probably corked or it could have a little bit of oxidation. And our wines, they really do sing after a little while. So that's why we've had the ability, our parents have another company that's kind of funded the winemaking for Tamina. And we sit down as a family each vintage and we're like, is this ready to go? So our 2011s have not been released. And I believe only one of our 13s were released, which is it's incredible. We wish that more people had this opportunity so that it didn't make the market think of, well, they're still holding on to this, there might be something wrong. That has nothing to do with us. I mean, we really want people to be able to enjoy what they're drinking that night. So yeah, right now you are drinking the 2018 Arsheen Pinot Gris. It's probably one of my favorite whites that we make. Our Pinot Blanc is killer, but there's like 800 cases. So really, I shouldn't tease the market with it because they probably won't be able to get it. Dominic is going to talk to you a little bit about Arsheen.
So all the label names we're going to talk about today, all the label names tie back into the family's Persian culture and heritage. Maysara, meaning house of wine. The Arsheen was the King Cyrus's eldest daughter. She started as the mathematician and astronomer in his palace, teaching that to the subjects. And Cyrus had a love of wine. And when he found out that his eldest daughter had such a sophisticated palate, he ended up making her the head winemaker at his palace. The Arsheen Pinot Gris, it's 100% stainless steel with this 2018 vintage. And being 7.8 grams residual sugar, the beautiful thing that Tamine does with expressing our site and not changing things is our site's known for acid. She got a dream property, to make wine with, because she never has to worry about our acid levels. And I think as you taste this, you're going to find how well that acidity complements that residual sugar she left on it. You don't feel like it's too much either way. It's just finding that harmony and balance, and doing so by just allowing the site to express itself, and I think that's something that as we work through these next 3 wines that you're going to find becoming more and more true.
I mean, as Dominic said, about the RS, but as in also the city level, that people always don't talk about pH of their whites, because that's really important. That the pH of this wine is about approximately 3. If I remember, if it was not 2.99, but it was 3, so it's perfect on the acidity level where I thought in white wine. So leaving a little bit of higher residual sugar kind of gives like a little kiss, not a sloppy kiss, but a good, good kiss. So I just, that's my whole concept of when I'm making this wine, is just that I don't want to be a sloppy wine that so you're like, oh, whoa, what happened here? Or sometimes I just say it should just be very crisp and clean with a little bit of touch of sugar in there, but it's not real sugar, but it's just there's sugar left from the fermentation. So the whole concept is just to pair this really well with, as I said, an omelet with, good crab meat and a little bit of like guacamole. It would be like, and then triple cream melted into the eggs. Oh yeah, this would be.
So for people that don't want to prepare,
it's
really,
yeah.
I think Thai food.
But I mean, it's just seafood. But I mean, overall, it can take the rich and dense and clean it up, because that was the whole idea, is to make a wine that can clean the palate with a heavy food. I don't think American food is very heavy, but sometimes if you want something delicious, like as they say, like Thai food or, seafood or like heavy cheese, I'm a big fan of that. Yeah. That's where my whole concept was, is make a wine just for that idea. And also my mother, I make the wine just for my mom too, because she does not like white wines. So I make this wine for red drinkers. So it's kind of has the serious impact, not being a porch pounder. Yeah. So that's the whole idea, not making it a porch pounder.
I'm loving how, it's a team effort and a team effort talking about the wines as well. And I'm learning new phrases as well, porch pounders. That's going to be something going back, and something that maybe I can introduce you to is the concept of like TV wines. It's just you sit down in front of the TV. It's just something to have in the glass, and you can't really say that's anything. What we've just tried here. I mean, I don't have masses to add, and I'm keen to sort of move to the Pinot Noirs, but I think you make an important point around. Often people they'll see the residual sugar number and they'll make the inference of how the wine's going to taste and what sensation is going to give them directly from that. And I'm like you, I definitely do have that kind of acidic palate and do want that sort of crispness. And, you can, depending on lots of different factors, you can have residual sugars that are even higher than this, but the most key thing, I think, that in my experience has been balance. And this is obviously, it's got the texture, it's got the acidity to do the job that you spoke about there with the food. But, above all, it's a lovely balanced wine and just, goes down very nicely.
So now we're moving into the Pinots. So the Jamsheed, Cyrus, and Asha are actually our national sales, international sales of Maysara. So Jamsheed, the whole concept of that was when I came in. So it used to be called Willamette Reserve, and then in 2004, we changed the name to Jamsheed, and he was a Persian king that saw his wine through a wine glass. And I joke about it and was like, well, why can't people see my world through a wine glass? So the whole concept was just making this an estate blend, taking every single block we have on this property and putting it into one bottle. So it's approximately about 245 acres. And it's like our elevation, as Naseem said, it's from 200 approximately up to 800 feet. I'm just taking every single fruit that is producing and putting it in this bottle. And as depending on the vintage, 10 to 15%. This one, if I remember correctly, is a 14. I did about 10% new French oak on it. And the reason I went 10% was just it was a very hot, warmer year. I was trying to respect my father's concept of don't put too much new oak because you don't want people like, oh, it's very oaky. So I really wanted to balance the fruit in the oak into that. So our pH levels, when we pick the fruit, everyone's kind of a little shocked by it because we're picking about like 3.25, max about 3.3. And I'm never worried about pH. And then when, we are putting the wines into barrel, it's still around like approximately like 3.35. And then when malolactic is complete, we do move about like a 0.1 shift. So it's like the highest I've ever had my wines to be. It's like a 3.5. Usually it's about 3.4 pH. So the acidity levels are there. And what I'm trying to capture is to be an ageable wine. As you heard, our whole concept is to open the wines a little later, not to open wines immediately. So these clones are in this wine is on our estate is 113, 114, 115, 667, 777, and Pomard. Those are the 6 clones we have on our estate. Actually, this year we got Wadensville in the second year. So next year it will be getting into the Jamshid program of the Wadensville. So it'll be the 7th clone coming in 2020. Actually, that's a great vintage. But overall, it's the whole entire estate. That's what you're tasting. Dominic, do you want to?
I'm going to interject. I think that it's what's really important for people to understand is that even with those warm years where we can get a little bit more on that jammier, richer side that New World wine drinkers enjoy, we're always going to be a little bit more so known for the Old World wine drinker. Not only do we believe acidity is important, but we really believe to showcasing the fruit is the most important thing. So it's been really interesting. A lot of our markets that are more European influence understand the wines a little bit more so than markets that are kind of used to that steak kind of dinner that want something that's Pinot, that's more like Syrah-like. We don't do blends. I mean, we really want people to be like, this is what a true Pinot Noir is. And as you taste, I think that you can attest to, it's very, very beautiful, pretty Pinots. And that's the most important thing for our family, is for people to be like, okay, we understand a little bit more about Old World moving in from Oregon. So
the Jamsheed 14, I think I get, as Tamanay talks about, it's the taste of the estate in a glass. Jamshid was one of the first Persian kings, and legend said he was able to see his entire realm through his full wine chalice. So naturally, this label needs to encompass everything that makes our estate so great. And you're getting that beautiful dark fruit we're known for. We're getting that color, and you're getting a little bit of that spicy characteristic coming off the sedimentary soils on that lower portion of the property. But coming out of a warm vintage where we had a lot of fruit production as well, you still have these beautiful floral notes. It's not this fruit-forward wine. There's so many different layers. There's that elegance that Tamanay strives year after year to attain. And it all encompasses in a wine that when family friends come from out of town and they go, what happened in this year? I think if you want to understand what happens in a vintage in Oregon with how crazy our weather is, you need to have a wine that isn't being changed by the winemaker, that is true to that vintage, and it encompasses a whole property. And that's sometimes hard to find. Customers and our consumers know that when they pull a 14, it's a different personality than that 12 they had previously released. And they each need to be respected in their own right. One's not better than the other. We're all going to have our personal opinions. You know, we each have a different palate, but year after year, Tamine continues to produce these wines that have such a distinct style and continue to have people coming back to try that next release and see how she captured the essence of that next vintage.
So the Cyrus is actually our middle tier Pinot Noir. So it steps above Jamsheed. Everyone, when I say middle, they think, oh, like backwards. I'm like, no, going up. So we are taking the east and west side of the vineyard, and I'm just focusing on 4 blocks, but there's 5 clones. One of our blocks has 2 clones, and I co-ferment those 2 together. And it's 18 months in barrel, 30% New French. And one side of the vineyard, it's from 200 to 400. And then I take the other side for 400, approximately up to 800 feet. And just focusing those, like I'm focusing on not soil, but more of not the feet, elevation, thank you. The elevation and one side to the other side of the vineyard. And putting those together. Year to year, it always I pick the same blocks, so I really don't change block to block from year to year. This again, it's about this is a 2014. The difference you're going to see from the Jamsheed to this, I'm going to say it's a little more. I want to say more earthy tones to it because I really like the mushroom quality of the Cyrus, and I want to get that, and it kind of gives you more texture and weight to it. And this wine, and it's my favorite wine. I brought this back in 2007.
So I personally think that the Cyrus is the most classical Oregon. You get that forest ground mushroom earthy quality that she's telling you. So people that tend to gravitate toward Oregon Pinot will always gravitate towards the Cyrus, whereas the Jamsheed, in my opinion, it's not that it's a step above or below. It's more so people that gravitate towards more of that New World kind of style. They go for Jamsheed, and then the last one that you're going to taste is that Asha, which is that beautiful, feminine, old world style. And again, as she said, we all have our favorites. For me, it's always been what I'm eating and the atmosphere that I'm in. There's not one wine, and I could genuinely say this about my sister's wines, not to make her head too big today, but the reality is that she has changed the way I drink wine. And in the past years with wineries that I've visited all over the world, you know, we've really had a great upbringing that we were able to travel and taste a lot of wines. It's really hard for me to gravitate towards other places because I've become so accustomed to her style that they're all beautiful and pretty in their own way. We're so lucky to have her. She might not hear me say this too often in all reality because I am the little sister compared, but or the middle sister, but she really is a fabulous winemaker, and this is her passion. And we could have had a million other businesses, but she fell into what she was supposed to do, which is kind of cool.
So when we get to Cyrus is Arsheen's father. He was the Persian king that, as he conquered new cities, new territories, new regions, and expanded the Persian Empire, so with it came vineyard. And his soldiers would go out and plant new vineyard and increase the wine production in those regions. He was also a king that was known for using wine as probably one of the first forms of biological warfare. He would send little bands of his troops out with wine, allow enemy soldiers to capture them when their cities were under siege, and wait well into the night after the barrels were long gone to send his soldiers through to slaughter all the drunken enemies. Cyrus is, just like Nassim said, that classic Oregon Pinot. It's that mushroom on the palate Tamine talked about. And the thing that I love about it is this wine can convert people that aren't into that earthy tone. This is that, and it's a perfect middle of the kind of tier production wine, because you go from that New World on Jamsheed, you get into that touch of Burgundian kind of earthy tone with a finish of red fruit cherry. And that is a perfect segue, I think, into that full Burgundian style that Nassim mentioned when we get into Asha. And time again on our flight, that's just what I see. You know, somebody comes in their first time and Jamsheed's what they go home with. The second time they come in, Cyrus is their thing. And then eventually, a year or two in, that Asha becomes their mainstay.
Typically, we do about 4,000 cases of Jamsheed on a good year, about 1,000 cases of Cyrus, and the final one that we're going to have is the Asha, which I think we've done about 560 the last few years. So it also gets a little bit more limited as you go in. And as I said, that we make 9 or 10 different Pinots, but quite a bit of them are made for Wine Club only, so they get exclusives that you can't buy in the marketplace, which is kind of cool. So Dominic is pouring that 2014 Asha, which I really think is really a testament to what she can create to be that feminine, elegant Pinot, as I was saying. Asha is an ancient Persian word describing someone with a clean conscience for good thoughts, words, and deeds. And I'll let you talk a little bit about the winemaking practice.
So the Asha is, so I came in 2007 into the winemaking, and I used to make 5 Pinot Noirs for national sales. And that was in 2007. And my father was predicting in 2007, he was like, I don't want to make higher end wines. And I was like, Dad, let me just do it. I just have a ego. I need to do it. And he let me. Yeah. So he allowed me to make our Delara and Mitra in 2007. But Asha was a wine that I got to bring in. And the reason I argued it in was that every winemaker he had them a label for them. So Asha was a wine that I made up, and as Nassim said, it was describing someone of good conscience, of good thoughts, of pure demeanor, and it was actually my dedication to biodynamics for the farming aspect and in the winemaking aspect of it, because what we're trying to achieve is just to make people realize, having clean wine or a clean or holistic farm is very important to Mother Earth and our souls today. So this is actually taking the first 13 acres that my father planted in 1998. So these are the original vines. They're all roots. No, it's all rootstock. There's no, not rootstock, sorry. It's all self-rooted. There's no rootstock. I tell people that you're not allowed to go there because if they do want to go there, they have to wear booties. I'm a big fan of booties because I don't want phylloxera on that site because it's Pomard. Majority, it's all Pomard, a little bit of 113. It's 24 barrels, and it stays in barrel between 23 to 24 months, depending on when I can bottle. And 2 is the vintage. 14, I think I put that 23 months. And it comes in a glass cork because I always tell people recycle or reuse the bottle. So that was my whole concept of this whole idea, is just to give back for biodynamics. As Nassim has mentioned, I make other little wines. I mean, sometimes I come in, I surprised Dom yesterday, and I was like, do you remember I made this wine? We're going to sell it to Wine Club, but I'm messing people's minds up for it. But my whole idea is just to make people to think and get outside their comfort zone to really think what this is. That's my whole idea, is just to really... And also enjoy a really good risotto with this wine too. Lamb, yeah. Like wild mushroom risotto with this dish would be really good. But as you can see, it's a little bit different, and you just taste it all 3 14s, but you can see the tier levels are very different and unique.
I just wish everyone could see Dom and Nassim drinking the Asha because they were fangirling the entire time.
We really wish you guys get to taste it. It's pretty damn good.
It is for sale in our tasting room here at Maysara Winery for only $45 a bottle. Yeah, so I mean, and this is something that, when I have folks come into the tasting room and they're coming through their flight in Oregon, and everybody prior to coming to Oregon, they do their homework. There's a lot of wineries. There's 700 of us in the valley, and so they'll go in through and pick out their different stops, and then they get to us and they're like, $18 for a Pinot Gris, Jamsheed's $30, Cyrus is $36, and Asha's $45. you're tasting through a flight of superb, biodynamically certified with the Demeter Association Pinot Noirs and Pinots for under $50. You could buy the flight and break what you'd spend on 4 bottles elsewhere. It's something that the quality speaks for itself, and the quality for the price point. My big thing is I'm 27 years old. I can't go out and spend $100 a bottle. And my goal with my friends has always been to show, look, you went out and spent $200 on that bottle, and when we tasted it blind at our house, you chose this $30 bottle over that $100 bottle that you brought over. It's when you taste it, it speaks for itself. And I think that's the beauty of our wines.
I think it's important also to say, that like we've actually have done blind tastings with like distributors who've come in, and we will open up bottles from day 1 to day 7, and we'll pour out a quarter of it, and we'll bag it up. We'll pour them of all days, all 7 days, and people will say that of these opened bottles, I would say day 5, day 6 was actually their favorite than day 1, day 2. And so it's something that's great on our wines that we can actually, you can open up your bottles and really hold it during the week and still taste just as good.
I think what we figured out during these blind tastings were that the fact that somebody couldn't tell that was a professional somm or a master somm, they weren't able to really tell, was it the first day versus the 5th day versus the 7th day? And it wasn't saying that one wasn't a little bit more tired than the other, but they couldn't figure out which one was either better or fresher, which is kind of crazy.
Our father, he kind of always says it's because of the farming aspect of what he does, and then getting the grapes because it's biodynamic. We are seeing the ageability in bottle and being open, and I totally do believe his theory is correct. But one of his whole philosophy is that when he started this winery, he didn't want to make expensive wines that people can't afford. He wanted people to afford these wines and it won't hurt their budget. And I think for all 3 of us, we want to keep that concept again, is that making wines are affordable, but just not to like kill the consumer and saying, we do make really expensive bottles of wine that people sometimes get mad at us. And I'm like, well, it's 1 barrel. So, yeah. So, I mean, we do have those wines, but these being the higher case amount, being the price point they are, we really are being reasonable in the sense of like, we're thinking of the consumers constantly. We're thinking of them, when to release them, when to, for the price points. We're not trying to gouge you to make money. I wish we would, because it would be nice to get it, I like to say, get a nice forklift in here.
I think what's really important on our end is that we are family dynamic, and playing back to it, we are constantly entertaining. We constantly have friends over, and, Dom's 27, I'm 28, and we're in the phases, Dom just bought a house and my friends are all having kids, and not everyone can afford that $75, $100 bottle at this point. And so it's cool that you could still be able to have your friends over, family over, and the back of your head, you're not constantly thinking, we just opened up $200, $300 worth of wine and it's only a few bottles in.
And we kind of spoke about this a little bit earlier, the fact that we care so much that what we consume as humans being organic and natural, and it's typically more so like what we put on our skin, our hair, our face, and food. But alcohol is so important, and to find wines that you can actually enjoy that are quality and in the affordable price point, it's hard to find. And I know for me and my group of friends, we're all in our 30s, but it's a situation that they sometimes think that by spending $50 to $100 a bottle, it means the quality is better. And that's not necessarily the truth. You're just paying for the name that you're buying. And for us, it's always important that our parents have made their money in other industries. And when my dad really started, he's like, I want to make wines that are affordable, but are healthy for our bodies to consume. And Dom's helping him write. He's got a huge seminar coming up. And just kind of reading what he was writing, it really is the importance that we take care of not only our generation, but the next generation and the generation after. We're seeing so much more disease in the world, but it's because things are produced in such a different manner than they used to be. So we're just trying to take a step back and be like, this is the old way of doing things. You don't need to manipulate to make good stuff.
Thank you so much to everybody at Maysara. As I'm sure you can hear, a real different kind of episode this time. And I think one that really shows the family approach they have to running the business. Do please check out below for the Maysara Winery website, where you can find details of all of the wines that we tasted. If you're in the UK, these wines are currently not being imported, and the family are actively seeking representation. Next time in the podcast, in episode 387, I speak with Scott Neal, owner and winemaker of Coeur de Terre. If you know somebody you think would love to hear these episodes from the Willamette Valley, do please send them over to interpretingwine.com/listen, where they can subscribe. And if you're not already, I would love to have you following along with me on social media, where I'm at Interpreting Wine on Instagram and Facebook, at Wine Podcast on Twitter, and email hello@interpretingwine.com. See you next time.